Good morning and welcome to the final questions and answers before our Christmas break. I hope you're all well. Thanks for all of the questions that you've been sending in. We're going to try and get through most of those today. I've got a few mentions that we're going to go through, some Black Friday highlights that caught my eye, and I'm sure you'll be happy to learn about those, just in case you haven't seen them yet. So we'll crack on with those. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and make sure you tick the bell so that you're notified of every single time we go live. So let's start. Black Friday highlights. I've got no new products to show you today, but there's some great special offers out there online. So let's go through those one at a time. So on the flashcenter.com, all used and clearance items, there's actually another extra 10% off those deals at the moment. So there's some really good deals to be had. Phase 1 is included in those deals as well. So if you're looking for a higher end medium format solution, have a look. There's a lot of used, really good quality gear on there. The code to be used on all of those items is Used Friday. The links and the descriptions and everything will be updated as we go, or possibly after. So keep an eye on the descriptions and the chat box down the bottom, and you'll see all of the links to each different thing that we discussed today. So Used Friday is the code for the extra 10% on the clearance and the used items. Fuji GFX, the 50R, at the moment, some cracking deals. £550 cashback on the body and £350 cashback on the lenses. So there's some really, really good deals to be had out there. And the Fuji GFX, lovely medium format camera system. And have a look at those, because those prices are unreal at the moment. So all good. Free Phottix accessories with a range of Elinchrom items. Again, the link is going to be posted down at the bottom for you, so you can have a look at those. Phottix produce a big range that we import and distribute here in the UK. Softboxes, the Raja Softboxes are amazing. I've shot with them a few times myself, and all of those boxes come with double diffusion. They come with a carry bag and also an egg crate on the front. They all range between kind of the £90 and £120 mark, so massively good value. Very quick up umbrella system that they all operate on. The light quality is absolutely superb. They're brilliant value for money, and if you buy any selected range of Elinchrom items at the moment, as I say, you get free Phottix accessories with those. So check out the link and have a look. If you're looking for some stocking fillers, and it might just be exactly what you're looking for. So have a look at those. So that's the Black Friday stuff all cleared. So we'll move on to some questions. So don't forget to keep sending your questions in. We're happy to help as much as we possibly can. So anytime during the month or while we're live, send the questions in and we'll get round to answering them as fully as we possibly can. So let's start. The first question we've had is HS or high sync or high speed sync more powerful? It's a question we quite commonly get asked. In testing, they're very similar, with HSS having the advantage that there is very little graduation. Now, it works in two different ways. HS is high sync, which the Elinchrom system, apart from the ELB 500, works on. We'll come back to that later, because there's another question that we can answer a bit more fully on that. But basically, the HSS is kind of high-speed sync is more relative to flash gun or speedlight technology or an IGBT circuit, where the power is made up of pulses of light to make up the entire exposure. So they are very similar, but with the with high speed sync on the flash guns not having the graduation. And what I mean by that is you'll see a drop off in light, and you start to get a darker period down towards the bottom of the frame or the top of the frame, depends on how your shutter works. We'll come back to that in a little bit more detail, because I'm going to be discussing in a little while the differences between our ELB 500 unit, which obviously is HSS on an IGBT circuit, and HS or high sync with the ELB 1200, because it works on full flash curve technology. So there's two different technologies that we're working with, and I'm going to try and explain the differences to you to give you an idea of exactly what you're buying into and what suits you best. So we'll come back to that in a little bit more detail. The other question I've been asked recently, the ELB 500, obviously our little portable 500 TTL unit, is obviously designed for travel. We have a big range of stands in store and online. I prefer to obviously travel very lightly, as I'm sure most of you will, especially when we're restricted with airline carry-on weights and restrictions these days. It's a nice lightweight travel stand is great. Elinchrom do a few heavier duty stands. The Phottix range of stands that we produce or import are vast. I mean, there's lots and lots of different options. There's carbon fibre options, there's aluminium options, so it depends on how much space you've got to travel with. I always tend to go for something that is a small travel stand that folds up as light as possible. So obviously my standard choice would be a carbon fibre, because I can save 2/3 of the weight of a standard aluminium stand. And as long as I have somebody to hold the stand when I'm out on location, if it's very windy, the weight of the stand isn't massively important. The beauty of having the ELB 500 is that with the strap on, we can actually put that over the stand to create some ballast to make sure that it's more resistant to the wind. If we've got an assistant, all of that goes away anyway, because we can get the assistant to hold the stand for us. So lightweight travel is the way I go for. I don't tend to have a massive amount of gear with me, so the lighter the stand is great. We'll put some links to some of the smaller stands in the comments below, both the aluminium and obviously the carbon fibre versions as well. So nice small lightweight pack for travelling around with, and obviously a nice lightweight small stand to go with it as well is always going to help. So check the links out on those for some stand choices, and then we'll move on to our next. Quite often get asked this question at shows: what are the top 5 lighting accessories that you would recommend for a beginner? So this all comes down to really what you're going to shoot. If it's general everyday photography, a bit of portraiture, we can look at some very simple, effective solutions that don't cost the earth. We don't need to go for massive, great big modifiers that cost a lot of money. We can be quite creative by using some smaller, cheaper end accessories that are going to give you that creative edge over somebody just using a speed light, for instance, because we can shape the light a lot better by using a proper flash head outdoors. Because of the linear action of a speed light, the light tends to come out in a very straight line. We've got a matchstick size flash tube, which obviously restricts the shaping of the light that comes out. Even if we put a big modifier on the front, we don't make the use of the whole area of the modifier. I'm all for shaping the light and manipulating the light to give me the effect that I need, and I can only get that effect to 100% of its worth through using a flash head, because I'm able to shape that light in exactly the way that I want it to go. So the top 5 lighting accessories that I'd recommend for a beginner would be: the first one is a brolly set. It's a really inexpensive item. We do a 2 brolly kit, which is a translucent shoot through and a silver reflective. They're about 85 centimeters in diameter. They're very effective. They make the use of the front reflector that's built into all of the Elinchrom units and actually give you that whole surface area of that 85 centimeters to maximize exactly the effect we're after. So if I want to shoot in very close, I can get the light quite soft. If the power goes down low enough, I can shoot at big wide apertures, and it gives me a really inexpensive modifier that if it does get blown over in the wind, it's a lot cheaper to replace than a softbox. We'll put the link in the bottom for you, but the standard Eco brolly kit, standard translucent shoot through and a silver reflective is going to cost you about 30-35 quid, so it's not a big amount of money. They're good all-rounders, and you can get quite clever with a bit of practice with an umbrella. At some point in time, you might want a deep parabolic umbrella to give you that little bit extra control. We can also add one of the diffused backs to it as well, which enables you to have a very portable, lightweight softbox. So it gives you a few different options as well. So the umbrella kit would be the first thing I looked at. The other accessory that I would go for as number 2 would be a more specialist style softbox. Now this all does depend on exactly what you're going to shoot and where you're shooting, but I'd go for something like a meter octagonal or a meter square softbox. It's going to give you a good all-round light quality. It's going to allow you a lot of control within your lighting scenario, and I quite favour the octagonal softboxes over the squares, only because I find the catch lights a little bit more natural. And that's the difference between those two modifiers. Everyone says, what's the difference between the 1 meter square and the 1 meter octagonal? It's the shape of the catch light. I also like to think that because it has 4 more sides to bounce off inside, the light becomes even more diffused and gives you that softer light quality as well. So the more the light can bounce around on different surfaces within that modifier, the different light quality it's actually going to give you. So an octagonal softbox is something not to shy away from. If you like the old traditional style catch lights with the square catch light, go for the square. There is very little difference, but if you compare the two side by side, you will notice that the octagonal gives you that very, very slightly softer feel, if that's what you're going for. So the third accessory that I would recommend would be something like an 18 centimeter reflector with a honeycomb grid. Again, a fairly inexpensive bit of kit. It's about £50 for the kit, and it literally is just a reflector that's 18 centimeters round with a recessed front to put in our grid. We can then create a very tight pool of light. We might look to use that as a backlight. We might look to use it to highlight a hair light maybe from above. We can also give a very tight pool of light on the background. So if you want an old traditional style headshot, we can actually put a pool of light on the background just by using that one accessory. If you want to go properly old school, we also have the Snoot and grid set. Now, a Snoot is kind of a forgotten item these days. It's quite an old-fashioned accessory, but it's still very effective. The Elinchrom one, again, around about £50, comes with the Snoot and also a grid. A Snoot will always give you a double-edged shadow on the background, just by the pure nature of how this modifier works. By putting the grid on the front of it, it gets rid of that second edge and gives you that very tight, controlled pool of light. Again, we can use it as a hair light. We can take the grid off and use it as a bit of a backlight. And the spread you get is actually quite good, depending on the distance away from the subject. Well, we can actually light from the top of the head all the way down and sometimes across the shoulder. So again, it's a really nice, effective accessory that just gives that little bit of separation between your subject and the background to keep that 3D look to the image. Otherwise, we make it look very two-dimensional, and it spoils the effect. It's always nice to have separation between the subject and the background, and makes that subject really, really pop from your background. The fourth accessory I would recommend you always have with you is a standard silver white reflector. This will allow you, especially when we're using different lighting techniques, and we have a lot, let's say for instance we're feathering the light, so we're actually moving the light source around, we're narrowing the light source to our subject to create shadows and depth within the image. The light that passes past the subject can actually be reused. It can be reflected back into the subject to relieve those shadows. Depending on how far away we are, there's a differentiation between the exposure coming from the flash and the reflected light coming back. So you always have that difference in exposure. You never get rid of all of the shadows on the other side of the face, but you will relieve them. You'll stop the denseness of those shadows. So we can relieve them to make it a little bit more feminine perhaps, or we can use the white side instead of the silver, which is a little bit less efficient, if you like, so we can reduce the effect but still notice it. So it's a really, really nice accessory to have just in case you haven't got the budget for a second light source. We can use the silver side to bounce some light back in, relieve those shadows. If we're lighting from above, the model or the subject can hold it underneath, and it actually relieves all of the shadows that you create from that butterfly style lighting above to actually relieve the shadows under the neck, and really give you a lovely feel and lift to the face. It gives you some nice catch lights as well. So that would be my fourth accessory that I would go for. The fifth accessory, this is a difficult one really, because there are still a few that I'd recommend that you went for, but I would probably, as my top 5, go for a strip softbox. Again, this could be an Elinchrom softbox, it could be one of the Phottix Raja softboxes. They do a very, very nice controlled strip, which is a very narrow, it's a 30 centimetre front by 140 centimetre in length. Again, it comes with the grid, so we've got a massive amount of control of exactly where we want to put our light. If we want to create a rim or an edge light down the side of our subject, it's very, very doable. Also for maternity, I've got a lot of maternity customers out there that want different types of lighting effect. I quite like shooting that type of stuff with 2 strips from behind at 45 degrees, just highlighting the edge of the bump and the shape of the body, but actually hiding quite a lot of it as well. So it gives it a nice look and feel to it. We've got a lot of control over the light, and we can stop, because of the grids, we can stop the spill of light going exactly where we don't want it to go. So have a look at those. All of the links for those bits and pieces will be down in the comments box underneath. So keep an eye on it. As I said, hit subscribe, hit the bell, get notified of when we go live, and use it as a bit of a library of information, and keep those questions coming in, because the more questions we get, the longer we can do these things for you as well. So it's all part of the service. So let's move on. I've got these kits in front of me. I've got our ELB 1200 and I have our ELB 500. So it's a fairly straightforward question. What are the differences? Obviously, the main difference is power. We have a 500 watt unit here, and we have a 1200 watt unit here. So it sounds a lot more. In reality, it's about a stop and a third, stop and a half more powerful in real terms. But there are different uses, and there are different ways that we can use these. Going back to the original question about the high sync, we have 2 different circuits here. Elinchrom historically have always used a technology called full flash curve technology. The only downside to full flash curve technology is our flash durations. We've never ever had a unit that has a very, very fast flash duration. We top out around about a 6,000th of a second, which in most situations is absolutely fine. If I tell you that the 500 TTL unit, because it works on an IGBT system like a speed light and like some of our competitors, we're able now to gain a 1/20,000th of a second flash duration from this unit because of the technology and the way it works. Now, when we look at a full flash curve, instead of it pulsing with light to make up that total exposure, the full flash curve actually has to ignite, it has to peak, and then it tails off, which gives us this area of a slower flash duration. But it obviously also means that we can change the way we use the high sync opposed to HSS. HSS is going to work. You set your trigger up, it communicates with the pack, we can sync up to 8,000th of a second with very little drama. The full flash curve technology, we've had to build into our trigger something called ODS, which is overdrive sync. It means we can set delays. So in the most basic terms, if we look at something that, let's say we're shooting at 8,000th of a second in broad midday sunshine. 8,000th of a second, let's say, is this long. The flash duration is about a 500th of a second, which is obviously quite a lot larger than our little window of opportunity when our shutter opens and closes. What we need to do is ensure that when our flash fires and it starts to burn and it peaks and it ignites, we need to make sure that our flash or our exposure is taken at the same time that it hits the peak of the flash. So we can delay the flash going off within our frame to catch that peak of light, which enables us to hit the full 1200 watts of power, and we can move that from side to side, and it's just milliseconds of delay. That's all it is, just to catch that peak of power to give us the most efficient use from this unit. This is why we have 3 different heads for our ELB and the old ELB 400 Quadra. We needed an action head to give us a faster flash duration at about 6,000th of a second. We needed the Pro head, which will give us an everyday all-round flash duration of around about a 4,000th of a second. And on the 400 ELB, the HS head gave us this 500th of a second, very long flash duration. So if you imagine at 8,000th of a second, 500th of a second flash duration actually becomes a continuous light source throughout our frame. We need to make sure that is the brightest part of that flash exposure to actually get our image perfectly exposed with no graduation. So we don't want any darkening coming off towards the bottom or the top or the side of the frame. Again, it depends on which way your shutter works. But it gives us that control of actually hitting that peak power. The IGBT system has one head that does everything. It gives us the 20,000th of a second flash duration, it gives us full TTL, it gives us full HSS. With every camera manufacturer on the market now, we're able to provide a trigger that will do this whole job for you. The other nice thing, as a little bit of an aside, if you're a Phottix, Mitros or Juno user currently, the Odin II trigger will actually work with the 500. We can change the radio from Skyport through to Odin II, and we can mix and match all of our Phottix flash guns within this unit. That includes the Indras and things like that, where we can actually control everything within our setup at the ELB 500 and control it as if it was a Phottix product. So it's a really nice feature that's been built in. So the main difference is in terms of basic specs. We've got a 500 watt unit, which is virtually brilliant for every situation you'll get into in the UK. If I fly abroad to be shooting on a hot sunny beach, the 1200 is the one I go for because I need that extra power. Even though for years I've used the 400s, they've got by, no problem at all. It's nice to be able to run a pack, not at massively full power, somewhere sort of half to 2/3 and get the same sort of results. I'm not working my pack as hard, therefore I'm retaining my battery life, and if I'm in a very, very remote location, I don't have access to power to recharge anything. If I don't want to take a second battery due to weight and luggage requirements, I don't have to. I can get as much efficiency out of that battery as I possibly can. So the 500, we've got HSS, we have TTL, we've got manual. It's an asymmetric pack. The weight is a lot lighter as well. You know, we've got this little unit with this little battery on the bottom that in experience, one head on about half power, easily get 800 to 900 shots out of the battery. If I'm on full power, we're down to sort of the 400, 450 end, which to be honest is still enough. It's not a massive issue. The cost is obviously a little bit different. It's around about, roughly speaking, half price. Again, we'll put the links in the bottom for you so you can check these both these units out. But if cost is an issue, then the 500 is going to be absolutely fine. And in most situations, we can always up the ISO from 100 to 200 anyway to make this unit almost twice as powerful in real terms. So the 1200 is a manual system. It's got the full flash curve, so we need to make the choice of which head we need. We either need the action head, the pro head, or the HS head, depending on what we're going to do. The HS head, even with a very slow flash duration, is going to do for everyday use. If it's just portraiture, we can get away with a 500th of a second slower flash duration in the studio. If your model's jumping up and down and you're trying to freeze action, probably not the best way of doing it. We can go to a high sync scenario where we can actually freeze the action with the shutter speed, not the flash duration, but in an ideal world we'd want a head to do each job. So one that gives you a fast flash duration and one that gives you your high sync capabilities. The other lovely thing about both of these units, they have a fully controllable dimmable LED light. So for the videographers out there that are maybe watching, you do a bit of stills, you do a bit of video, the LB500 has a 90 CRI modelling lamp, which is fully dimmable. The 1200 watt has a true 92 CRI modelling lamp, and if you're unsure about the technical specs of CRI, its colour rendition index means a lot more to videographers generally than it does to stills. But I quite often use the 1200 modelling lamp as a fill, just to lift those shadows if we're shooting somewhere where I don't necessarily need flash. I just need something to lift the image a little bit. The 1200 watt modelling lamp is absolutely superb. And for talking head videos, if you're doing some stills but the client wants some video afterwards, the 1200 is a great all-rounder. The head runs silently. We have a silent switch on the back, which doesn't stop the fan running, but it actually reduces the revolutions of the fan to make it a very, very quiet piece of kit, so for talking head interviews and stuff, it's not going to affect the sound quality during your video. So it's something to consider if you do both types of work, and maybe you want to get the most efficiency out of this money you spend. You can have a unit that does both jobs. The other lovely thing about the 1200, and I've actually started to use this quite a lot in the studio, because it's a 1200 watt pack, but it goes down to like 7 watt seconds. I can shoot most of the stuff that I want to shoot on a daily basis with this one unit, because I have big wide aperture, very shallow depth of field at the bottom end, and I can have much smaller apertures at the top end for doing group shots, or where something in the scene that I need a lot of depth of field. The choice is yours. You've got full control over this unit. The other lovely thing about it is, if you're using it in a studio, there is no active power socket on this unit. Elinchrom designed it to be the ultimate adventure pack. Therefore, we start putting charge sockets on the side, we lose that ability to keep it as weatherproof as possible. So what they've done is they've come out with a mains dock, which actually replaces the battery on the bottom and allows us to put a kettle lead mains into the pack, and obviously it just runs as a standard studio head all day long, and it's a great bit of kit for studio work. I use it quite a lot, and just the operation of the 1200 just makes everything perfect for what I tend to shoot. It's a good all-rounder for everything. We also do an option, we do the battery air, which is fully able to be carried onto an aeroplane. There is no issue with that at all. And then we also do the big HD battery, which is a lot more powerful, weight difference very, very little. But it will give you a lot more extra flashes from that pack. So if you are just in the UK travelling around, you do a lot of location stuff, then the HD battery is a really, really good upgrade for this unit, and will allow you to continue to shoot for a lot longer at higher powers, or even longer at lower powers. And obviously we've got that extra power as well over the 500. We've got, you know, 1 1/3, 1.5 stops difference in power, so just that little bit extra actually makes a huge amount of difference. So one head on the 500 will do everything for you. If you want the fast flash durations, you also want to be able to do the HSS, all very, very possible with the 500, and the 3 head options on the ELB 1200. The choice is yours, the budget is yours, so it's just a case of weighing up the possibilities. It's worth mentioning that both of these units are in our rental department, so you can take these out and play with them. And as with everything, Christmas coming up, we do rental deals over the Christmas period where you can have it for virtually the 10 days that we're shut for a very, very small amount of money. And the ELB 500 will be in that deal as well. And don't forget, if you rent from Friday through to Monday, you get charged 1 day's hire. So to actually play with the equipment and try it out before you buy it, take advantage of our try before you buy scheme. The rental you pay for this unit is actually refunded if you come back and buy one of the kits that you've actually tried. So even if you buy something slightly different, there's a deal to be had. So talk to us. We'd rather the kit was out being used over the Christmas period than sat on our shelves locked up. So give us a shout if you've got some requirements over the Christmas period, or you've got some time where you want to maybe get away from the family and the festivities and do some shooting for yourself. It's all here ready to go. So get your bookings in early, because we do tend to get very busy over the Christmas period. So it's worth exploring the rental side of things. That really kind of covers the differences. So just to recap, we have the IGBT system, which makes up the total exposure of pulses of light. Very, very fast. You can't see it, but it makes up its exposure doing it that way. The full flash curve technology hopefully explains now, because of this peak of power we've got to meet, and the ignition of the gas within the flash tube makes the flash duration a bit slower than some of our competitors, but for standard studio use, we generally 6,000th of a second is plenty. We don't need any more than that. So I hope that answers those questions. Moving on, the other question I've been asked at the moment, which I'm going to do a feature of in January, we're going to look at some LED panels that are available. We have quite a lot of interest at the moment for makeup vloggers and alike with these big ring lights. I've been asked 3 times in the last week about doing a feature on some of these ring lights. So I'm going to be doing something like that in January. If there's any other Phottix products that you'd like us to have a look at and feature on here and go through and do some demos, very, very happy to do that for you. So get it in your calendars for January, the date to be announced. So if you subscribe and say hit the bell for notifications, we'll keep you up to date with exactly what's going on. But the main focus on the January session will be LED panels, the pros and cons, the different manufacturers and what's actually available. But these ring lights that the makeup vloggers and stuff are using seem to be really, really popular at the moment and give that beautiful circular polar mint catch light in the eye. So it's taking the old ring flash to a different level with continuous light. We get some different effects. So we'll be running through those in January. So keep tuned for those. The other question that I'm going to try and attempt going on from the LED panel and output of light, we get asked quite a lot. What's the difference between lux and lumens? To keep it as simple as possible, lumens is the light emitted by the light source, so how bright or dim that light is. That is your lumens. Lumens is the brightness of a light source on a surface. So for example, and I'm going to read this from here to keep it very, very straightforward. If a light emits 1,000 lumens and all of that light is focused on an area of 1 by 1 meters, that area has 1,000 lux of illumination falling on it. If instead it falls on an area of 2.2 or 4 square meters, that's 250 lux. So the standard rule of thumb is lumens is the light emitted by the light source, and the lux is the brightness of a light source on a surface. So when you're looking at buying your LED panels and you are looking to buy the right thing, you need to obviously make sure that the brightness is right and everything else. So have a look at the lux and the lumens levels and make sure, maybe test one, maybe a higher one before you use it, just to make sure it gives you exactly what you need. We also do obviously the big rotor light system as well, which is all Skyport enabled, so it's a really nice effect to add in something within your setup in the studio, maybe as a continuous light source. A lot of boudoir photographers now are using continuous light sources. Now that the LEDs are better technology, the brightness is a lot better. We've got a lot of boudoir photographers alongside newborn photographers that are actually using some big LED panels now. I like quite soft natural light, and the LED panels, although gives you a longer exposure because they're not generally as bright as flash exposures, the light quality is different. For me, for makeup, hair and beauty, it works, but for me, for newborn, you want that very soft, dreamy light, as you do with kind of the boudoir side of things. So for my personal preference, I still like using flash for that type of scenario. But it's worth having a look when we discuss these panels in January about what sort of different lighting effects and stuff you're going to get. I'm being lit at the moment with 3 rotor light panels, and I can't see anything, but the brightness is amazing on them. They're great. I mean, they're aimed at kind of the film and TV industry as well, but we have a lot of photographers out there that are using these panels alongside their flash equipment now, because we can get those effects. We can get from daylight through to tungsten, anywhere in between, and we've got this fully dimmable unit that's Skyport controlled that we can actually incorporate within our systems and units. So that's really the questions we've had this week. I'm hoping that I've answered them as best I can. If you've got any more questions or you want me to elaborate on any of these, please send me a message. You can either send it through on the Light Doctor page, or you can send it through on the Flash Center page. We'll get them, we'll answer them, and keep on sending these questions in. The date to be announced in January, but as I said, hit subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of when we go live, and we'll see you in January. Have a lovely Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for watching.